The courtroom didn't feel like a courtroom. It felt like a stage. Bright lights glared overhead, casting Judge Judy's expression into something sharp enough to draw blood. Rows of reporters sat pressed shoulder to shoulder, notebooks trembling in their hands. At the defense table, Jasmine Crockett's posture was steady, her hands folded neatly on the polished wood, her face a mask of calm. A bailiff called for order. No one moved, no one even breathed. Judge Judy's voice rang out, crisp as a snapped branch. This court is prepared to proceed with the claim. She lifted a single sheet of paper, her gaze locked on Jasmine. The plaintiff is seeking damages in the amount of $150 million. The words seemed to echo, impossible to absorb all at once. A low gasp rippled across the room. One of the reporters whispered, 150 million. What did she do? Jasmine didn't flinch, didn't blink. She simply looked at the judge and waited. Judge Judy continued, her tone unwavering. The basis for this claim will be presented in detail. She paused, just long enough to let the suspense grow. But let the record show that the amount reflects not only financial damages, but reputational harm of the highest order. A shiver moved through the gallery. The prosecutor rose, a stack of documents in hand. Your Honor, this case concerns a pattern of actions so egregious that it has cost the plaintiff more than money. It has cost them the faith of the public. Jasmine didn't look away. Her breathing was slow, measured. Judge Judy set the paper down, folding her hands. Ms. Crockett, do you have any preliminary statement before we begin? Jasmine's voice was even, almost soft. I do not. The prosecutor lifted his eyebrows, surprised. Nothing at all? You're facing the largest civil penalty in this court's history. Jasmine's gaze didn't flicker. Nothing yet. A hush settled over the room. Somewhere in the back, a reporter scribbled one line in frantic handwriting. What does she know that we don't? Judge Judy tapped her gavel once, sharp and final. Proceed. And across the country, people leaned into their screens, hearts racing. What did she do to make them demand $150 million? The prosecutor's shoes clicked across the marble as he carried the stack of documents to the witness stand. He placed the first file down with a theatrical flourish. Your Honor, the evidence presented here will demonstrate a deliberate pattern of defamation and interference. Reporters craned their necks. Jasmine didn't look at the file. She kept her gaze fixed on Judge Judy. Judge Judy arched an eyebrow. Interference with what exactly? The prosecutor smiled thinly. With a series of high-value contracts, media partnerships, and public engagements that were systematically undermined by Ms. Crockett. A ripple of murmurs spread through the gallery. Judge Judy glanced at Jasmine. Ms. Crockett, do you deny these allegations? Jasmine's voice was calm. I don't deny anything I haven't heard in full. The prosecutor's jaw tensed. Then you'll hear it now. He flipped open the folder, pages rustling like a storm. On February 3rd, 2025, Ms. Crockett is alleged to have made statements suggesting the plaintiff's enterprise was engaged in fraudulent activity. He paused, letting the word fraudulent hang in the air. These statements were broadcast nationally. The resulting fallout cost my client an estimated $80 million in lost contracts alone. Gasps rose from the benches. Someone whispered, 80 million, just for what she said. Jasmine remained motionless. Judge Judy's eyes narrowed. Do you intend to dispute the broadcast record? Jasmine didn't look away. No. The prosecutor looked momentarily triumphant. Then you concede the statement was made. Jasmine's reply was even. I concede the words were spoken. A flicker of confusion crossed the prosecutor's face. But you don't deny they were false? Jasmine's gaze never wavered. I haven't said anything about their accuracy. A hush deeper than before settled over the courtroom. Judge Judy folded her hands. Ms. Crockett, you understand that failing to contest this claim is effectively conceding liability. Jasmine inclined her head just slightly. I understand. The prosecutor smirked as if he'd won already. But Judge Judy studied Jasmine for a long moment, something calculating in her stare. Then why, she asked quietly, do you look so unconcerned? Jasmine didn't answer, because sometimes silence was the only strategy that mattered. And across the country, millions of viewers felt their curiosity turning to obsession. What did she know that none of them did? The prosecutor lifted a second file, the crisp paper stark against the polished wood. Your Honor, the next exhibit documents a series of communications sent by Ms. Crockett to high-profile event organizers, warning them against engaging with the plaintiff. He turned, letting the pages flutter. These emails were sent from Ms. Crockett's official account. Judge Judy's brow furrowed. Is there any dispute about authorship? Jasmine's voice remained steady. None. A ripple of disbelief moved across the courtroom. The prosecutor cleared his throat, his tone growing bolder. These communications included language implying criminal misconduct. In the plaintiff's estimation, this is the crux of the reputational damage. He glanced around, ensuring every reporter's pen was moving. In total, these actions contributed to over $150 million in cumulative losses. He let the number land like a hammer. Jasmine didn't so much as flinch. Judge Judy steepled her fingers. Ms. Crockett, I'm giving you one more opportunity to address this directly. Jasmine lifted her chin. And I will. The prosecutor raised an eyebrow. When exactly? Her gaze shifted to him, cool and unhurried. When the performance is over. Gasps rippled through the benches. Even Judge Judy's mouth twitched in surprise. Excuse me, the prosecutor demanded. Jasmine's voice was almost gentle. When you finish reading your prepared monologue, I'll be ready. The prosecutor's jaw clenched. This is not a performance. She tilted her head. No? Her voice stayed soft, but it cut sharper than any accusation. Then why did you rehearse it for 3 days before you ever filed the claim? A murmur spread, louder this time. Reporters looked at each other, scribbling furiously. Judge Judy's gaze sharpened. Ms. Crockett, are you suggesting this proceeding was orchestrated? Jasmine folded her hands. I'm suggesting the truth doesn't need theatrics. The prosecutor swallowed, shifting uneasily. Judge Judy leaned back, studying Jasmine's face. Very well, proceed. And in that moment, under the bright lights and the cameras, viewers across America felt the ground shift. She wasn't afraid because she knew something no one else did. Judge Judy adjusted her glasses, her gaze never leaving Jasmine's face. Counsel, proceed with the final portion of your claim. The prosecutor cleared his throat, voice crisp. Yes, Your Honor. He lifted the thickest file yet, its cover stamped with the word Exhibit C in red ink. This document details the cumulative losses, including contract withdrawals, sponsorship terminations, and future earnings projections. He paused, letting the tension fill the air. It is the basis for the $150 million demand. A reporter near the back whispered, She has to say something now. But Jasmine didn't move. The prosecutor began reading aloud. Between February and April 2025, no fewer than 22 contracts were voided due to Ms. Crockett's statements. These included multiple national advertisers, television syndication deals, and a publishing contract valued at $18 million. He looked up, savoring the effect. These losses were not speculative. They were immediate, quantifiable, and devastating. Judge Judy's expression was carved from stone. Ms. Crockett, do you understand the magnitude of these claims? Jasmine's reply was calm as ever. I do. The prosecutor's voice dropped lower. The plaintiff's reputation was so thoroughly damaged that recovery was impossible. He lifted his gaze to meet hers. And all because you chose to share allegations you could not substantiate. For the first time, a flicker of something, pain, maybe regret, moved across Jasmine's eyes. But it was gone before it could settle. Judge Judy tapped her gavel once. Ms. Crockett, this is your last opportunity to dispute or contextualize these facts before the record is set. Silence. The gallery held its breath. Finally, Jasmine spoke, her voice soft enough that the microphones almost missed it. Your Honor, may I ask one question? Judge Judy's brow furrowed. Proceed. Jasmine turned her gaze to the prosecutor. When you say unsubstantiated allegations, which part are you referring to? He blinked, caught off guard. The claim that the plaintiff's enterprise was fraudulent. She inclined her head just slightly. Thank you. Then she folded her hands again. That's all for now. The prosecutor sputtered, confused. That's it? Judge Judy studied her carefully, voice quieter now. You don't intend to deny the substance of these charges? Jasmine met her gaze with a steady calm. Not tonight. The hush that followed was so complete it felt like a held breath, because everyone knew, whatever she was waiting to say, it would change everything. The courtroom lights felt hotter than ever. Reporters clutched their pens as if bracing for an aftershock. Judge Judy folded her hands. Ms. Crockett, you appear to be implying there is context the court does not yet have. Jasmine's voice remained steady. That's correct. The prosecutor leaned forward, exasperated. Then why wait? If you have evidence that would contradict these claims. Jasmine cut him off, her tone quiet but firm. Because evidence is only part of the truth. A low murmur moved across the gallery. Judge Judy's gaze sharpened. Ms. Crockett, if you have material information, you are obligated to present it. Jasmine looked down at her hands. When she raised her head again, something in her eyes had changed, no longer detached, but almost sad. I am aware of my obligations. The prosecutor gave a tight, humorless laugh. So you admit you intentionally withheld key facts. She turned to him, voice still soft. No, a pause. I'm saying you don't understand which facts are key. The hush grew deeper. It felt as if the walls themselves were listening. Judge Judy tilted her head. Ms. Crockett, you stated earlier that the words were yours, but you never confirmed whether they were false. Jasmine drew in a slow breath. Because they weren't. Gasps erupted from the benches. The prosecutor nearly dropped his papers. Judge Judy's voice dropped an octave. You are affirming that your statements were accurate? Jasmine nodded once. Yes. A ripple of shock pulsed through the courtroom. Reporters began scribbling furiously. The prosecutor regained his voice. Then where is your proof? Jasmine looked at him calmly. When you finish your performance, I will share it. The prosecutor's face reddened. Performance? Her tone was quiet, unapologetic. This trial was never about truth. It was about spectacle. She lifted her gaze to Judge Judy. But if you want the truth, I'm ready. Judge Judy watched her in silence, her expression unreadable. And in homes across America, viewers were riveted. What proof could she possibly have? Judge Judy adjusted her glasses, her gaze locked on Jasmine with the focus of a surgeon preparing an incision. Ms. Crockett, this court will not tolerate evasions. If you have evidence supporting your claims, produce it now. Jasmine lifted the slim black folder she'd kept closed since the hearing began. Her thumb rested on the edge of the cover, as though she might open it, or not. The prosecutor's voice was tight, impatient. Your Honor, the defense has repeatedly refused to disclose this so-called proof. He gestured at Jasmine with a sweep of his hand. This is nothing but theater. Jasmine turned her head, studying him without a flicker of emotion. You keep saying that word. The prosecutor frowned. What word? Her voice was soft. Theater. She paused, her thumb tapping once on the folder. Perhaps because it's the only language you understand. A ripple of uneasy laughter moved through the gallery. Judge Judy raised one hand for silence. Enough posturing, she said crisply. If you possess exculpatory evidence, you will present it now. Jasmine's gaze shifted to the cameras, then back to the judge. I will present it. She paused, but only under one condition. The prosecutor sputtered. You are in no position to make demands. Judge Judy held up a finger. What condition? Jasmine's jaw tightened, her voice low but steady. That when I share what's in this folder, it will be entered into the record in full. The prosecutor's face paled. Your Honor, that material has not been reviewed for admissibility. Jasmine didn't flinch. Because you never asked. Judge Judy studied her, something cautious in her eyes. Ms. Crockett, if you are withholding relevant documentation, it will be reviewed by the court. Jasmine nodded. Then I am ready. She lifted the folder, just an inch higher. A collective breath held across the courtroom. Reporters poised their pens over fresh pages. But Jasmine didn't open it, not yet. Her gaze locked onto the prosecutor. Jasmine's hand rested on the black folder as if it were a live wire. Judge Judy's eyes narrowed, studying her every breath. Ms. Crockett, the judge said evenly, if you possess evidence that disproves the claims against you, this court expects transparency. Jasmine tilted her head slightly. And you shall have it. The prosecutor gave a brittle laugh. Then open it. Jasmine didn't move. Instead, she spoke softly. Before I do, I'd like the court to acknowledge something. Judge Judy's brow furrowed. Proceed. Jasmine's gaze swept the gallery, the cameras, the prosecutors. When this trial began, the accusation was simple, that I lied to destroy a reputation. Her voice was steady as stone. But no one here has asked why I said what I did. The prosecutor cut in, voice rising. Because your motive doesn't change the fact that you caused catastrophic harm. Jasmine's chin lifted a fraction. Motive changes everything. The hush was so deep that the microphones picked up the sound of her folder sliding across the table as she pulled it closer. Judge Judy's eyes flicked to the bailiff. If this material is relevant, it will be admitted. Jasmine nodded. It is relevant. She drew in a slow breath. Every word I spoke was based on documents that have never been made public. Gasps rippled around the courtroom. The prosecutor's face drained of color. What documents? Jasmine's hand hovered over the folder clasp. Financial ledgers, internal memos, records that show exactly how the plaintiff acquired contracts they claimed I destroyed. Judge Judy leaned forward, her voice lower now. Ms. Crockett, do you understand the consequences of presenting falsified materials? Jasmine looked her dead in the eye. I do. A pause. Which is why I'm willing to submit them into evidence under penalty of perjury. The gallery erupted into a flurry of whispers. But still, she didn't open the folder. The prosecutor tried to regain his composure. If you truly have this evidence, why wait until now to reveal it? Jasmine's voice was almost a whisper. Because the truth is not a weapon to be brandished for applause. Judge Judy's gaze sharpened. Then when will you show it? Jasmine lifted the folder an inch higher. When this court is ready to hear it without interruption. And across America, millions of viewers were leaning so close to their screens they could see the faint tremor in the prosecutor's hands. Was she bluffing? Or about to prove every accusation wrong? The courtroom was so silent that the bailiff looked ready to faint. Jasmine's thumb rested on the folder clasp. Her face betrayed nothing. Judge Judy spoke softly, her voice like the low rumble of an approaching storm. Ms. Crockett, you may proceed. Jasmine didn't look at the cameras. She didn't look at the gallery. She looked straight at the prosecutor. "You've insisted that my statements were reckless." She paused, her tone calm. "But I was careful, very careful." And with that, she opened the folder. The first page was a single ledger sheet, edges yellowed with age. A line item was highlighted in faded ink, a 7-figure payment linked to a shell corporation. Jasmine slid the document across the table. "This is the first record I discovered." The prosecutor reached for it, hesitated, and then took it. Judge Judy's gaze narrowed. "What are we looking at?" Jasmine's voice stayed level. "A transaction that contradicts the plaintiff's sworn statements about the origin of their funding." The prosecutor swallowed visibly. "This proves nothing. One ledger." Jasmine lifted her hand. "I'm not finished." She drew out the next sheet, an internal memo. Her thumb tapped the signature line. "This document confirms that the plaintiff knew about the discrepancy." Judge Judy raised her hand for silence as reporters nearly fell over themselves to see. "Ms. Crockett, you understand this court must authenticate these papers." Jasmine nodded. "I welcome that." The prosecutor's voice cracked. "If you had this, why wait?" Jasmine's reply was so soft it barely carried. "Because the truth deserves more than a headline." Judge Judy leaned in. "How many records are there?" Jasmine closed the folder halfway. "Enough." The hush was thunderous. The prosecutor's face reddened. "Then show them all." Jasmine's eyes met his, steady as the ocean. "I will." A pause. "But not tonight." Gasps exploded across the room. Judge Judy's gavel struck once. "Order." But Jasmine's gaze never wavered. And in living rooms across America, viewers felt it. She was holding the last word in her hands. The bailiff stepped closer, ready to collect the documents. But Jasmine didn't release the folder. Judge Judy spoke first, her voice low and precise. "Ms. Crockett, the court requires a complete record." Jasmine inclined her head. "Then you will have it." She pulled out another page, an email thread stamped confidential across the top. "This correspondence," she said evenly, "details the plaintiff's internal discussions about how to obscure the funding sources listed in Exhibit A." The prosecutor's face drained of color. "That's, Your Honor, these materials were not disclosed during discovery." Judge Judy's gaze was steady as ice. "And yet, here they are." Jasmine laid the email gently on the table. "I have retained over 400 pages documenting the same pattern." Gasps rippled through the gallery. The prosecutor's voice wobbled. "This is a stunt." Jasmine's tone stayed calm. "If it were a stunt, I'd have released them to the press 6 months ago." The hush deepened. Judge Judy leaned forward. "Ms. Crockett, you're asserting that every claim you made publicly was rooted in these records." Jasmine looked her directly in the eye. "Yes." The prosecutor struggled to regain composure. "Then why did you wait until the 11th hour to produce them?" Jasmine drew in a slow breath. "Because you were never interested in the truth." Her gaze shifted to the cameras. "You were interested in destroying me before I could show it." For a moment, no one moved. No one spoke. Judge Judy tapped her pen once against her notepad. "And now?" Jasmine didn't blink. "Now I'm giving this court everything." She set her hand on the folder. "And when the record is complete, the narrative you sold to the public will end." The prosecutor's voice was a whisper. "You're bluffing." Jasmine finally let her hand fall away. "Then call it." A collective shiver spread across the gallery. Judge Judy drew in a slow breath. "Ms. Crockett, will you submit all records for review?" Jasmine nodded once. "After I say one last thing." Gasps erupted again, because everyone knew this was the moment she'd been waiting for. The courtroom felt like it was holding its breath. Reporters clutched their pens, eyes wide. Judge Judy's expression had gone utterly still. Jasmine rested both hands on the folder. Her voice was quiet, but it carried all the way to the back row. "Before I submit these records," she said evenly, "I have one statement for the record." The prosecutor crossed his arms. "Make it quick." Jasmine didn't look at him. She looked at Judge Judy, unflinching. "I never set out to destroy the plaintiff." Her voice grew even softer. "I set out to stop them." A hush so deep it felt like the air itself had thinned. Judge Judy spoke, her tone cautious. "Stop them from what?" Jasmine's gaze shifted to the cameras, millions of people watching. "From stealing, from laundering funds, from convincing the public that their empire was legitimate." Gasps exploded around the room. The prosecutor stepped forward. "That is an outrageous—" Jasmine lifted one hand, silencing him with nothing more than her calm. "These documents," she said, tapping the folder once, "are not allegations." Her eyes locked onto Judge Judy's. "They are proof." Judge Judy's voice was almost a whisper. "And you're prepared to stand by every word?" Jasmine didn't blink. "Under oath." The gallery erupted in shouts, cameras flashing like lightning. Judge Judy tapped her gavel twice, sharp, final. "Order." She studied Jasmine, her expression unreadable. "Then submit your records." Jasmine slid the folder across the table without a trace of hesitation. As the bailiff carried it away, she folded her hands once more. Her voice, when she spoke again, was almost gentle. "I didn't need this trial to know I was telling the truth." A pause. "But now the world will know too." And in homes across America, millions of viewers felt a chill. It wasn't a bluff. It was the moment everything changed. Judge Judy exhaled, her gavel hovering. "This hearing," she said quietly, "is adjourned, pending full review." A single strike of the gavel ended it. Jasmine stood, gathering her notes as calmly as if she'd just finished a routine meeting. She didn't look back. She didn't have to. Because sometimes the truth didn't need to be shouted. It just needed to be shown. "I didn't walk into this courtroom to perform. I didn't come here to prove I could out-talk anyone. I came here because some truths are too important to leave buried under noise and intimidation. You can question my motives. You can twist my words. You can threaten me with any number you want to put on a lawsuit. But the truth doesn't disappear because someone with more money demands it. And tonight, the truth stood its ground. That's the only victory that ever mattered to me."